everybody, it's Romania Black. No big deal. We're just on chapters 69 through 71 of Scum Villain. Everything's great. You know, Shin Ching Cho and Liu Chingay and Lo Binghe were just all sauntering around, just the three of them, staying at it in, just the three of them. Shin Ching Cho thought he had everything all taken care of. Liu Chingay's making some discoveries about Shin Ching Cho that Shin Ching Cho may not even realize. And Lo Binghe was like, ah, Shizun, you need everyone to believe you? Well, have I got a plan? And so now we're at the Zhaohua Monastery, where Lo Binghe has gone into everybody's dreams and told them about Tianlong Jun, and so Shin Ching Cho can have people believe him. Well, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice for him? And then the book is making me suspicious of Qing Yan again. I just... We need to dive into these episodes, into these chapters. We're going to be looking at chapters 69 through 71, which is a nice little 30-page chunk. I'm pretty excited about it. But first, as per usual, the Feral fandom. I've got to get selective because the Feral fandom the last few weeks on the Discord have been sharing lots and lots of fan art. A lot of fan art. And a lot of the fan art is very, very angsty. A lot of the fan art is very sad or very beautiful or very heart-wrenching. I'm looking for the feral shit. I'm looking for the stuff that makes you go, wait, what? And makes me laugh really hard. So the three pieces I have to show you all. First off, Shang Qinghua, we haven't seen him in a while, except, Liu Chingay was like, it didn't take much for me to get all the information I needed out of him. But I really liked this one that Pancake shared, where Shin Ching Cho's like, I'm having an episode. Like, this is a really bad. And then Shang Qinghua was like, is it the beach episode? The question marks get me because Shin Ching Cho would know about the beach episode. He's enough of an otaku, he would get it. But that just sends me. Where Shang Qinghua, I love that Shin Ching Cho and Shang Qinghua, whenever they are each having the worst time, the other person is benefiting from it so much because it's not them suffering in that moment, which is just hilarious to me. But I just love that Shang is like, are you and Lo Binghe gonna have a beach episode together? And Shin Ching Cho's like, the bags under his eyes and like his eyes looking maniacal. God, there is no telling how much that the Dongwon would have to censor because of this series, but it would be so worth it. It'd be so worth it. I'm just like, I wish that we had it. Anime Annie and I were talking in the comments, and she's like, this is why they're so feral. And I'm like, no, I get it. Absolutely. We also talked about kind of the idea, we've talked about it several weeks ago with Shang Qinghua, who is airplane shooting towards the sky, and the idea of them being a sellout as an author. And a lot of content creators, like we talked about, they kind of face the same struggle of, do I do what I like and not get the recognition that others get from going with the bandwagon and going with the flow of popularity? Or do I sell out and compromise who I am and what I like to get the views and get the money? And, I can sit here and critique, people that make content and sell out, but at the end of the day, a lot of people are relying on that content for their well-being and for their jobs. So if Shang Qinghua was needing the money as an author to live, then you can't really get too mad at him for doing it. It's just the fact that he just did it in the most efficient and easy way possible and didn't fill in the plot holes and left all of this mess that Shin Ching Cho has to clean up. That's the issue. So, but it's kind of sad that Airplane didn't get to write the story that they wanted to, which is, what Shin Ching Cho has to deal with now. So who knows how things will turn out. We haven't seen Shang Qinghua face to face in a while, so it's going to be interesting when he does come back in the story, how his presence is going to affect things, especially as far as Shin Ching Cho and Lo Binghe have developed these last several chapters. But I really love that fan art. It's great. Also, Gabadoodle pointed out that there are a lot of things, and I'll show you all the screenshot from the Discord, there are a lot of things that make me sad, meaning Gabadoodle, that the footnotes in English are not robust in the translation because we end up missing out on a lot of context clues, even more than in the other MXTX novels, I think, because there are a lot of references to Chinese internet culture and whatnot that are left out, like Shen Qingqiu throwing his hand out to Sheng Qinghua in that chapter set. He specifically is doing an air Kang hand, which is a Chinese meme that's what's illustrated in this pic. This is Air Kang, and this is the famous hand meme. Our boy is literally a terminally online otaku, constantly making meme references. Now, I will say, referring to the comments I wanted to talk about, Way3845, we did talk about props to Lily, the translator, for getting a lot of the humor so spot on in this novel, because I've messed with translation before, not specifically translation, but kind of the rhetoric of it, and like fan translation versus official. It's hard. It is hard. Anytime, as an English major, we learned this. Anytime you take something from one language, you refashion it into another language, something is going to be lost. It's just how it is, because you can't translate it. Anytime you like make this chemical change with the language to form something new, there's going to be something altered or left behind or tweaked that won't come back into its original shape. So I do give massive props to Lily, who's translated this, because this novel and this series is hilarious, and to translate from one language to the next and still keep the cultural context but also the humor is so hard. But I do agree with Gabadoodle that this series, especially in comparison to Modao Zushi and Heaven Official's Blessing, those are straight up like fantasy. Fantasy, supernatural, thriller, detective, whatnot, but they're not based in the modern world, so there aren't pop culture references. So you don't need to translate that. There may be some terminology and some tropes that are in those series that you can explain to an audience that's not from China, but you don't have to worry about the pop culture references. Here, with this series, yeah, I do think it would have helped, at least for a Western audience or an international audience, to have explained those gestures a little bit more. But I'll play devil's advocate for Lily and the publishing company. It could be like with Air Kang, if they're a copyright figure, you can't reference them in the book without giving them money. So if you're trying to get the Danmai published, that might be a sacrifice of, we're just going to let it go so we don't have to pay royalties and we don't have to reference it and worry about copyright. We'll just let it go, and the audience, whoever gets it, and the internet will do its job and spread that reference all throughout there. So I get that, but I thought that was really good to note over in the fandom. And then this image from Anura1313. I love Mobei-jun. I love how Mobei-jun's drawn. We haven't seen Mobei-jun a lot in this series, which makes me think, based on all of the fan art of him, he's going to have a heavier presence, probably in Volume 4, or maybe the latter half of this volume. I don't know yet. But the fact that so many people draw him and reference him so much makes me think he's going to have a bigger presence. But I do love that there's like two camps of Mobei-jun artists. It's either the artists that kind of favor more of the Donghua preview where he has the white hair, or they do like the black hair, but they all have the blue eyes, and he's all like freaking buff out the wazoo. And I just love that he throws Sheng Qinghua and he's a little hamster. Someone on the Discord said he basically throws him like a Pokemon, and I'm like, that's actually hilarious. I still want to root for them. If Shin Qingqiu gets to have love in this novel, why can't Sheng Qinghua? Why can't he have love in this novel? Maybe Mobei-jun wasn't meant to kill him. Maybe he was meant to fall in love with him. Sheng Qinghua, you just got to settle this and make this come to fruition. What if Sheng Qinghua confronts Mobei-jun and they end up starting like a romantic subplot, and that is what gets Shin Qingqiu to realize, oh my god, are you kidding me? This is a Danmai. Maybe. We'll see. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, the Feral fandoms, they're acting good. I've got a couple other comments from the latest chapters. Dan Cat 327 notes that I liked this quotation from them saying, Lo Binghei just wants his senpai to notice him, and he's not afraid to make it everyone else's problem. I thought that was hilarious. I was like, yes, he does not give two shits who has a problem with him liking Shin Qingqiu. He's going to be front and center about it. And I do like that. I do like that boldness about Lo Binghei. He can be a brat, but I do like that. Angry as Panda notes that MXTX takes the trope of the harem lead and then makes them human through Lo Binghe. And yeah, definitely through volume 2, Lo Binghe was not my cup of tea. I was just not having it. He was a brat. He was immature. I got where he was coming from. I'm not a harem story person, so all the tropes that were slowly being subverted, I was just like, I was not having it. But this last volume, where they both have started to come around and kind of meet halfway and get to know each other better, it's making me, and now that more and more information is coming out that's painting Lo Binghe in a better light, that is helping out a lot in terms of that. And then Sorum X notes, it is well, Sorum X said it was sad because based on some chapters ago, there was the possibility that we find out from Shang Xinghua that Shin Shingqiu was maybe meant to be a more morally gray character, and that because of the fans not liking Shin Shingqiu, he kind of ended up going this route of becoming the scum villain and being punished, and that may not have been the case. And Sorum X was saying how it's kind of sad because Shin Shingqiu took over that body, so any chance of the real Shin Shingqiu ever having that redemption story isn't going to happen now because Shin Yan has taken him over. And I was like, yeah, I do think that that's the case, but also I don't know. There's so many, we talked about this in the comments, there's so many what ifs with this world that I don't know. Based on how the original novel goes, Shin Shingqiu was going to end up a human stick and it wasn't going to work out anyway just because of the novel. Yeah, it's sad his character's gone, but I do think that it is worth Shin Yan kind of making his story, the original story and how it was supposed to be, kind of have the chance to come to life versus how it was in the original. So I don't know, but yeah, so many what ifs. I mean, the poor conspiracy board Sama over here to the side is just littered. I've got him updated from volume 2. I haven't posted a picture in a long time, but I've been taking screenshots of Whiteboard Kun after every discussion, and at the end of the volume I just update Whiteboard Kun, and it's a lot. When I come back and we do the live stream over Scum Villain, I'll just have like conspiracy board Sama behind me and it will look ridiculous, you know, like you do. Or maybe the last chapter set or something will have it prevalent. But I'm super excited to dive into these chapters and see what we get. So I've talked enough. I've rambled. We're going to get started with chapter 69 through 71 of Scum Villain Self-Saving System. And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's just get ourselves ready and let's go. If 1 or 2 people had the same dream, one could call it an oddity, said Wu Wang. But if several hundred people have the same dream at the same time, even calling it miraculous would not explain it away. In addition, this dream was no ordinary sort. It was incredibly realistic, and upon waking, one felt that even the waking world was not as real as that of the dream. Yeah, the dream world, Lo Binghe, if he's got an ability, it is controlling that dream realm. He has got that shit on lock. He has got that down, and there's been so many times in the novel where I've been like, wait, are we dreaming? Are we not? Because you just don't know. It's just that real. All the cultivators present, who had reached core formation or greater, empathized with this description. Their hearts still palpitated at the memory, and they all nodded in agreement. Why was this Tian Longjun sealed? One person asked, confused. If he really was so horrific, well, how was he overcome last time? Master Wu Qin sighed. The trail truly is an injustice. If the Palace Master of Huanhua Palace were here today, who knows how greatly he would lament. The Palace Master of Huanhua Palace, a woman said, surprised. What does this have to do with Lo Binghe? Her voice was crisp, clear, and charming, melodious like a warbler's song, and Shin Shingqiu turned around to look at the sound. The one who spoke was a slender and beautiful Taoist, nun from Tianyi Temple. Shin Shingqiu couldn't tell exactly which one she was because there were 3 Taoist nuns, who looked like they had been carved from the same mold, from their faces to their figures and attire. Standing together, they looked like 3 bright and lovely blue flowers. Even their faces wore identical expressions of strange, unspeakable excitement. That's right, it was definitely excitement. What? The triplet sisters from the original Binghe's harem. Well, long time no see, harem members. Is he saying unspeakable excitement? Are they excited to see Lo Binghe? What is this? Before, Shin Qingqiu would definitely have been beyond himself with excitement. Then he would have begun envisioning the passage to follow, where the protagonist bedded his women, all while hypocritically roasting airplanes shooting towards the sky. But now, Lo Binghe lowered his voice to its quietest, but the sourness in his tone wafted as far as 10 kilometers away. Shizun, are they pretty? Ah, forget it. Shin Qingqiu looked back away. The plot had changed into something unrecognizable, and those 3 Taoist nuns hadn't become Lo Binghe's extraction vessels. At this time, they shouldn't have been acquainted with Lo Binghe, yet they still showed interest in news about him. Shin Qingqiu automatically assumed the excitement on their faces was the first stirring of affection. Lo Binghe's stallion powers were still going strong. That is so crazy because, yeah, he used to be all excited to see the female leads being like, oh yeah, Lo Binghe, you're going to get some action. You're going to get some romance. And now he's like, I was saying that while at the same time I was telling Airplane how stupid it was. He's like, was I just faking? Was I just putting on airs? And then Lo Binghe is like, do you think they're fancy? So Lo Binghe thinks that Shin Qingqiu's interested in them. And Shin Qingqiu's like, this is just not, he's like, I'm not interested in them, so it's not worth it. But are they interested in Lo Binghe? It's not going to do them any good. Amitabha Buddha, the palace master I speak of is the previous one, said Master Wu Wang. That Lo Binghe merely used underhanded methods to usurp the seat of leadership. What merits has he earned recognition as palace master from the masses? Lo Binghe raised his eyebrows and twisted his lips in disdain. Master Wu Wang continued, but indeed the real story cannot escape association with Wanhua Palace. Tens of years ago, the head disciple under the old palace master's tutelage was named Su Jian, which is his mom. Okay, so she was the head disciple. All right. Shin Qingqiu's spirits picked up at this. At this rate, they were about to unravel the riddle of Lo Binghe's origins. Shin Qingqiu's like, oh, good. Finally, Shen Qinghua was interrupted last time. Now we can carry on. Let's go. This woman had unparalleled talent and was keen and intelligent and was decisive in her actions with lordly presence. Well, sounds like her son. The old palace master especially loved and valued this direct disciple of his, and he saw her as the apple of his eye. The entire sect tacitly recognized her as the next master of Wanhua Palace. No matter where he went, he ordered Su Jian to accompany him and serve at his side. He regarded her most highly. Shin Qingqiu recalled the old palace master's blank-eyed, drooling appearance at the holy mausoleum and thought to himself, did he see her as the pearl in his palm or a slab of meat for his exclusive use? Not a sound was heard in the hall of great strength, except for Master Wu Wang's resonant voice. One day, the old palace master and Su Jian accepted a request to subdue a monstrous beast. On the way back to the palace, they passed through an old city at the lower reaches of the Low River. Demons and monsters were on a rampage, and few survivors remained in the surrounding cities. But while investigating, Su Jian met a young man traveling alone. The young man had a unique presence, and his features and the color of his skin were extraordinary. He sat below a draping willow, playing and singing a song. Such a character should not have appeared in such a location at such a time, and Su Jian immediately sensed something strange. After exchanging a few questions, she became certain this person was peculiar, and he was definitely no common sort. Shin Qingqiu was engrossed by this tale. So Tianlong Jun really had been a youth of literature who loved the human world's poems, songs, and prose since he was young? And what was the most terrifying variety of such youths? The kind that was both cultured and handsome. The following script was very easy to predict, as long as his singing wasn't too much of a letdown. Love at first sight was definitely at hand. Who knew? The plot would take an abrupt turn for the worst, slapping him right across the face. Su Jian immediately reported this to her Shizun. The old palace master was more alarmed the more he thought about it. As the youth showed interest in Su Jian, conversation came easily to them, so the old palace master decided to meet like with like. He commanded her to approach the youth and investigate his background. Su Jian was quite adept at this, and she easily discovered that this man was the leader of the demon nobility, the one who had united both the northern and southern territories, Tianlong Jun. Shin Qingqiu had thought it would be boy meets girl, girl meets boy. He never imagined it would be fantasy, internal, infernal affairs. It wasn't the overuse. I'm assuming infernal affairs is like a reference, but y'all will probably comment it down below. It wasn't the overused trope of tall, dark, and deadly demonic saintly ruler meets pure and charming little white flower. It was actually pure and naive ruler who doesn't know the treachery of the human heart, steps out into the world for the first time and meets the pillar of a righteous sect, a cool and calculating overlord of a flower with a dark side. Oh, I'm into this. Hell yes. Oh, and what a blend they become to become Lo Binghe from that, right? Because he's like sides of both of them. Shin Qingqiu finally understood what the meaning underlay Tianlong Jun's wry tone when he spoke of Su Jian. That half-mocking, half-adoring, cold and heartless. He was torn asunder and his flowers were plucked by her. As the old palace master at Su Jian maintained a rapport with Tianlong Jun, he also sent people to follow and observe them in secret. But the disciples he sent were always lost them, so the old palace master could only take to the field himself. Finally, his efforts bore fruit, and he discovered Tianlong Jun's motives for wandering around the human realm. For one day, Su Jian and Tianlong Jun met on Bailu Mountain. There they sat shoulder to shoulder atop the head of the giant green snake and speaking in low voices. If Shin Qingqiu hadn't guessed wrong, that giant green snake was Zhu Xilong. It could only be Zhu Xilong. Whether as a nephew or as a subordinate, being taken along on a date as a cushion really was the most pitiful thing. Oh my God! He was just a cushion for their date. Zhu Xilong, he's like Wen Ning from Odazushi, the eternal third wheel. If Shin Qingqiu hadn't guessed wrong, yep, that giant snake was Zhu Xilong. Afraid to alarm Tianlong Jun, the old palace master stopped a distance away, but he faintly overheard their words. Su Jian patiently guided the conversation, probing from all sorts of oblique directions, before she finally got Tianlong Jun to forget himself for a moment, and unintentionally reveal why he had infiltrated the human world. He would bathe the cultivation world in blood and pillage the hidden treasures kept by each sect and build the demon race's might. When that last part was spoken, a tidy chorus of inhales sounded from the crowd, but Shin Qingqiu did a spit take. To be frank, this kind of content, which followed the standard logic of a final boss, it just didn't fit Tianlong Jun's style. No matter how Shin Qingqiu thought about it, the guy didn't seem very much like the sort of character who'd speak in such haughty lines of conquest and wild ambition. In addition, as their supreme ruler, Tianlong Jun could enter the demon race's holy mausoleum whenever he wished. That place contained more treasures than one could ever take, let alone use. If he was bored, he could even set up a booth and play ring toss for fun. Did they really think he would care about the handful of hidden treasures possessed by the four major sects? In Shin Qingqiu's opinion, this account was full of red flags. Which, it's airplane shooting towards the sky, riding it, so who knows? But Master Wu Wang continued his account in a flat tone. After obtaining this information, the old palace master immediately informed all the great sects in secret. Tianlong Jun and Su Jian met at Bailu Mountain 2 times a month, so the sects decided they would join together and besiege Tianlong Jun on the date of their next meeting. As for the rest, that was the Battle of Bailu Mountain. The events of that day would be best told by sect leader Yu, who participated in the fight. Yu Qingyan nodded. In truth, there's not much to be said about the battle that day. Tianlong Jun never expected he would be met not by Su Jian, but a full assault. He only brought one of the demon generals under his command, the one called Zhu Xilong. After being surrounded, he was defeated and captured. If so, their side had won by an unfair advantage of numbers. But Yu Qingyan gave an honest account and neither hid nor embellished the sequence of events. However, many present had grown up listening to their sect seniors brag about the Battle of Bailu Mountain, so when they were hearing the true version for the first time, some felt awkward and some were angry. Yeah, because they'd been lied to about how grand it was when it was really just an ambush. Yu Qingyan said, in order to protect his master, Zhu Xilong was struck head-on by my Shizun spiritual artifact and transformed back into his original snake. Into his original shape, he fled as half snake. Meanwhile, Tianlong Jun was sealed beneath Bailu Mountain. So, Zhu Xilong had been blasted into Snake Man form that he'd worn in the Dew Mushroom Cave by a bolt of heavenly lightning from the hand of the previous Xiongding Peak Lord. With his black and white sense of gratitude and grievances, along with his need to repay every slight, before Shen Qingqiu continued thinking about it, the system beeped with a notification. Quest issued. Please help Lo Binghe complete the Zhaohua Monastery scenario. Objective: raise righteous image points by at least 200. Righteous image points? Shen Qingqiu had a flash of realization. He finally remembered what plot point occurred at Zhaohua Monastery. Oh, yeah, because last week he was trying to remember, and he's like, what happened there? To explain this, one must mention Sha Hualing's dad, Zhu Xiangjun. Oh, after this unfortunate demon noble had been screwed out of his territory by his own traitorous daughter, he wandered about the southern border for some time and gathered a crowd of rabble, hoping to stage a return to power and take revenge on Lo Binghe. But as he was going up against the protagonist's Diamond Hard Halo, Diamond Hard? Really? I'm not sure his halo is only that. He could forget about accomplishing either of these beautiful dreams within his lifetime. Zhu Xiangjun's plans failed again and again, so of course he grew frustrated. And what would he do with this frustration? Find someone else to vent it on, of course. So he decided to make Zhaohua Monastery this someone else. Placed next to Sha Hualing's initial attack on Shiding Peak, these actions were curiously similar in essence, despite the different perpetrator. It was the same naive arrogance, the same method of digging their graves. Shen Yan had roasted it back when he was reading. No wonder they were father and daughter. Their trains of thought careened off the same weird tracks. In the original work, because Zhu Xiangjun sent a bunch of miscellaneous fighters to harass the civilians and monks in Zhaohua Monastery's vicinity, Zhaohua Monastery held a conference not to deal with Tianlong Jun, but to clean up these annoying and disposed demons clamoring for attention. But the reason for the conference wasn't important. The important part was that Zhaohua Monastery was indeed an opportunity for Lo Binghe to farm righteous image points. In the original, Zhu Xiangjun's demon underlings infiltrated the human crowd and found every opportunity to cause trouble, wanting to stick it to those bald donkeys, their words. But they barely had a few seconds for mischief before they were beautifully and unconditionally subjugated by Lo Binghe. With such a development, the current Lo Binghe would of course be able to gain some righteous image points. At least he could go from beyond redemption to neither black nor white. Shen Qingqiu discreetly glanced around. Sure enough, he discovered a few people within the crowd whose expressions weren't quite right. Very good. The props were ready to take their place. The three beautiful Taoist nuns had originally been important characters in this section. With the collaborative efforts from Lo Binghe's harem in the original story, the efficiency of his righteous image farming had of course been higher. But now they had totally become bystanders in the crowd. In conclusion, so the female lead's role was going to Shen Qingqiu again, eh? Oh, okay! In that dream, Tianlong Jun used a recrafted body to slaughter his way through the human realm, plunging all who lived in utter misery. Wu Wang said severely. This old monk believes that this was his threat to us, an omen of his revenge for the Battle of Bailu Mountain. But Tianlong Jun's original body has already been destroyed, someone said. Even if he wants revenge, he shouldn't be anything to fear, right? You mustn't underestimate Tianlong Jun, said Wu Wang. The demon race recognizes him as the strongest heir of the heavenly demon bloodline, with no equal across all past generations. In addition, his subordinates include not only his capable and loyal General Zhu Xilong, who has already recovered his own body, but a son. Oh no! So now we have to make sure that Lo Binghe is recognized as being not the enemy. Not the enemy, as all the swords point at him. Of course not. Of course not. Chapter 70. Shocked and horrified, everybody began whispering into each other's ears. Su Jian actually had a son with him? Who is it? Wasn't she ordered to only feign cordiality towards Tianlong Jun? How can this be? Some individuals had found another, more particular point of focus and were considering the question of reproductive capability or compatibility. Can humans and demons really have children? We look about the same, so it's probably possible. Su Jian may have approached Tianlong Jun in the name of her master, said Wu Wang. But how could she successfully win his trust without using herself as bait? This one believes she was originally capable of maintaining clear boundaries. However, demons are adept in the art of bewitching human hearts, and a perfect defense against such things is impossible. One small slip, one moment of carelessness, and she fell into the demon's trap. I don't know about that. A single false step became a lifetime's worth of regrets. By the time we'd conceived the campaign, she must have already been pregnant. As for their child, you all are intimately familiar with him. He is the one who we just spoke of, the imposter in Huanhua Palace, the cuckoo who roosts in the warbler's nest. Lo Binghe, oh my god! Oh, calling him the cuckoo, I'm getting March Comes In Like a Lion flashbacks! As soon as Wu Wang said this, the whispers in the hall immediately surged, like the tide, building into a towering wave. Shin Qingqiu couldn't help himself and stealthily glanced at Lo Binghe. In the beginning, Lo Binghe had even been in the mood to joke around, content to stand and listen. But the more he heard, the more severe he became. Now his smile faded entirely, and there was a pallor to his face. Yet his eyes were frigid, colder than a blizzard-choked wasteland. Yu Qingyang's knuckles slowly brushed against Zhang Su's hilt. I was able to meet Senior Su Jian once at an Immortal Alliance conference many years ago. Lo Binghe's appearance is 7/10 identical to his mother's. At first, I too thought it was only a coincidence, as many people in this world look alike. However, since he is half-heavenly demon by blood, it's difficult to take it as mere happenstance. The man from Bai Chi sect interrupted again. Well, if it was done against her will, then we can't blame her. But since she must have known this child was a demon, why give birth to him at all? Others immediately followed up. Well, that's right. If Su Jian hadn't given birth to him, how could there be a Lo Binghe? Why didn't she abort that evil fetus? How horrifically shameful, really too shameful. No wonder I've never heard mention of the name Su Jian before. Naturally, a scandal of this magnitude would be covered up and concealed. If someone from our sect committed the same sin, we'd commit suicide on the spot. How else could we face our master? Oh my god. Oh, poor Lo Binghe. Upon hearing this, Master Wu Chen looked like he had something to say, but he only shook his head lightly. Originally, this matter concerned a woman's reputation, and moreover, Benefactor Su had already passed away, he said at last. If not for the extraordinary circumstances of the present, these events would never have been revealed, but they simply cannot be hidden any longer. A demon's blood is powerful and potent, and a mother's life is intertwined with that of her fetuses. An abortion at that point would have been highly dangerous. As a deeply proud person, Benefactor Su couldn't accept this, and she was even less willing to tolerate the dubious looks of outsiders. So, the old palace master brewed her a drug that was harmful to demons. Back at the mausoleum. After drinking it, she left Huanhua Palace, and from then on, no one knew what became of her. My Lord Buddha is merciful. This one asks everyone to abstain from harsh words and the karma they bring. Lo Binghe's face was devoid of expression, but his fingers unconsciously clenched and relaxed several times. Near where he and Shin Qingqiu were standing, someone said, refusing to acknowledge the lover she had relations with, and utterly merciless to her own flesh and blood, what a cold-hearted yet incredible woman. Indeed, if only her fortune had been slightly better and she hadn't fallen under that fiend's spell. With such a profound accomplishment and a promising future, she would have become an extraordinary person of great renown by now. No matter how profound her accomplishment, she coupled with a demon and conceived such a monster. Ugh, the mere mention of that thought is disgusting. I wouldn't want that kind of accomplishment, even if it were offered to me on a platter. I fear Su Jian also felt too ashamed to face anyone. That's why she left her sect and renounced her apprenticeship. Suddenly, the man from Bai Chi's sect said, well, this means that from the beginning to end, the campaign against Tianlong Jun was driven by neither evidence nor incident? It was all based on a couple of things the old palace master said about that fellow? The main hall instantly fell silent, devoid of a single titter. As if completely unaware, the man continued, well, I'm only asking. You can just listen or not. However, do you really feel that you were in the right, launching that kind of campaign based only on the old palace master's side of the story? Why do I feel from start to end Tianlong Jun did only one thing, which was be tricked by his lover? You even made that young woman approach a dangerous person from a foreign race and ordered her to trick him. Then you forced her to abort her child via poison and in the end made her leave her sect heavy with regrets? I don't find this at all commendable. Our Bai Chi sect has never behaved in such a manner, and we would never encourage it. With this remark, a slight unexpected surprise bloomed within Shinchingcho. Given how tone-deaf this good brother had always been, he really wouldn't have guessed that this time the man would actually manage to say something so reasonable in his tone-deafness. It seems his IQ was a notch or two higher than the average side characters. Okay, yeah, we'll go back and talk about this, but we gotta keep going. It was Wu Wang who broke this short period of silence. His white eyebrows furrowed, and he pressed his palms together and rebuked the man. Oh, these words are beyond foolish. Since ancient times, the demons' invasion into and massacres within the human realm have gone on unceasing. Should we have waited for Tianlongjun to legitimately start butchering us to no regret, once it was too late? Besides, as a leader in charge of one of the four major sects, how would the old palace master benefit from maliciously deceiving the cultivation world? Moreover, the existence of a seed of evil born of relations with a demon is even less permissible. What's detestable is the sheer power of that fiend's life force, to the point that even taking that drug wasn't enough to destroy the fetus. Wu Wang spoke these words with overflowing righteousness, and applause and exclamations of approval instantly followed. Master Wu Qin wore an expression like he couldn't bear to listen. He brought his palms together and began chanting sutras. It wasn't that no one found the idea cruel, but after hearing Wu Wang's speech, the crowd was deeply affected and invigorated by the mood, and so their thoughts changed. That fetus was Lo Binghe after all. What was there to sympathize with? And so they too began to cheer and applaud. Lo Binghe's lashes lowered. It was impossible to tell if he was listening or if his mind was wandering. The past few days, the figure he cut had gradually thawed. Now it was frozen once more, a new layer of frost crystallizing on top. At present, people within the Hall of Great Strength were gnashing their teeth over his malicious survival while cheering for his hypothetical death as a fetus. Yet Lo Binghe acted like he couldn't hear a single thing. If the plotline had unfolded in an ideal manner, the progression here should have been like so. The sect leaders solemnly discussed how to deal with Tianlongjun. Suddenly, demons aiming to cause chaos appear. Lo Binghe single-handedly takes care of the demon lurkers and farming righteous image points in favor. But because of a bunch of gossipy hens, they had talked and talked, Lo Binghe's backstory had been dug up. This had caused the focus of the narrative to deviate from the original. Shinchingcho watched the silent Lo Binghe. Suddenly he was struck with regret. He should never have taken the Shaohua Monastery quest. Master Wu Qin sighed. Well, then fix it, Shinchingcho, come on! Master Wu Qin sighed. Must you put it that way? Benefactor Su, Benefactor Su. She was a lone woman wandering around the outside world. The old palace master sent many to search for her fruitlessly for years. No one knows how much suffering she endured before the end. And though Lo Binghe is half demon by blood, previously he had too never caused any unspeakable harm or evil. Don't confuse yourself over who deserves kindness, Shidi, said Wu Wang. Recall the extent of what they forced you to endure at Jinlan City, and you'll understand just how sinister and evil a demon's intentions can be. When dealing with demons, you must extinguish them before the sprouts take root. That is the correct strategy. This father and son have conspired against us for a long time already. They've joined hands for their return in vain attempt to destroy us. Indulging them isn't kindness, but a woman's foolish softness. Well, wait, wasn't she a badass 5 seconds ago? It will only result in horrors beyond what unfolded in that dream realm. This Wu Wang's cultivation might have been pretty good, but he really had too much pent-up anger. Other than his lack of hair, there wasn't much Buddha in him at all. Rather than taking up a staff and becoming an abbot, he should have taken up an axe and become a Li Kuai. Or Li Kui? It says a character from Chinese classic Water Margin, known for his bad temper, a pair of axes, incredible strength, and a berserker style of fighting. By contrast, Wu Qin's martial abilities were only so-so, but he was a gentle and kind soul. So he was even more deserving of the title of master. Even after this scolding, his expression didn't change, much less his tune. Joined hands to conspire, but such a thing might not be the case. The two abbots from Shaohua Monastery squabbled over this without any breakthroughs until Yu Qingyang interrupted them. Regardless of whether they've joined hands, one point is absolute. I'm afraid Lo Binghe is no good news. He raised his voice. Qingge. Qingchu. Are you still lurking? The hair on Shinchingcho's back stood up, and he dithered for a few seconds. Only then did he slowly stalk forward. He felt like a grade schooler who the teacher had called on for a reprimand, and the underside of his face prickled faintly. Luckily, he was quite thick-skinned and shameless, maintaining perfect poise as he bowed. Zhangmin Shizhong. Now that the focus was on him, the person behind him was even more impossible to conceal. Lo Binghe! Someone immediately called out in shock. It's Lo Binghe! It really is him! How'd he manage to get in? Shinchingcho's here too! He really isn't dead? Back at Huayu City, I saw him self-detonate with my own eyes. The majority of the exclamations had the tone of those who'd seen an evil spirit, yet mixed in were the delicate voices of several women. These belonged to the 3 beautiful nuns from the Tianli temple, who clutched each other's arms, their faces suffused with an unnatural flush. The strange part was some of the flushing seemed to be directed, of course, at Shinchingcho. I was about to say, he's now the protagonist, so they all love him. Oh my God, no! Remain seated. So this is going to be the reverse of Huayu City. This is going to be the reverse of it. How you going to get Lo Binghe out of this now, Shinchingcho? How you going to do this? Remaining seated, Yu Qingyang looked at him. A lot of nonsense you've stirred up these days, he said mildly. Are you done? Yu Qingyang had never assumed such a severe attitude when speaking to him before, even going so far as to use words like nonsense. This was already the equivalent of flogging. It seemed Liu Qingge had bad-mouthed him quite thoroughly. Shinchingcho swore that one day he'd steal Chenglong and use it to chop all the pork hock in all the kitchens of the 12 Peaks. He'd chop until the oily sheen smothered all its sword glares. Get the plot back on track. Let's get it back on track, okay? Can you guys please direct your attention to the demons hiding within the temple? How are we supposed to farm righteous image points like this? Shinchingcho was about to meddle a little and draw everyone's attention to the lurkers' suspicious features. Currently, they were disguised as disciples from miscellaneous sects, when Wu Wang viciously slammed his staff against the ground. Lo Binghe, to think you delivered yourself to our doorstep, he said with a sneer. This simplifies matters. Why not say it outright? When does Tianlong Jun intend to commit the deeds he's performed within the demon realm? What do the things he wants have to do with me? Lo Binghe asked coldly. Someone else grunted, the 2 of you are father and son, and you ask what this has to do with you. Lo Binghe was indifferent. He's not my father. A mountain of ironclad evidence sits before you, and you still deny it? Do you take everyone here for toddlers? Said Wu Wang. Lo Binghe shook his head. It was unclear what he was stubbornly clinging to, but he repeated, he's not my father. Wu Wang humphed. Truly, good never lasts long, while curses and calamities are undying. If only Su Jian had gotten rid of you back then, things would have been perfect. These words were truly too vicious. Lo Binghe's breathing seemed to stop for a moment, and a blood-red light flashed faintly within his eyes. Shinchingcho couldn't afford to give it more thought. He immediately grabbed his hand. Liu Qingge was standing behind Yu Qingyang with his arms crossed. When he saw Shinchingcho move to hold Lo Binghe's hand in full view of the crowd, a vein popped down his forehead. Hey! Whenever Liu Qingge was enraged, but also unwilling to say more, his go-to expression was always a fierce, aggressive, hey! However, it was completely impotent as a deterrent, so Shinchingcho simply ignored it. Lo Binghe having an episode in this kind of situation wouldn't be fun at all. It wasn't only an issue of whether he would be able to farm favor. The main problem lay in this Zhaohua Monastery subplot being highly difficult to brute force one ways through. If one used spiritual energy, one would be pitting their power against hundreds of others, and if one used demonic chi, one would be facing Zhaohua Monastery, whose barriers adepts were as numerous as the clouds in the sky. Sealing demons was their specialty. Moreover, attempting a brute force solution meant falling to an IQ on par with Team Sha Hualing and her father. Who is this Su Jian? Lo Binghe asked coldly. My mother was a mere washerwoman. Wu Wang's report isn't the whole story, and you know very well the kind of person the old palace master was, Shinchingcho said quietly. The tone he used was that of someone instructing his disciple, doing his best to remain calm and objective. When it comes to these old affairs, those 2 might well have embellished the tale, and their trustworthiness is suspect, so wipe them clean from your mind. Lo Binghe clutched his arm. Shizun! Tianlong Jun isn't my father. His words sounded both like a plea and a declaration. I don't need a father. Shin Qingqiu didn't know what to say. He only squeezed Lo Binghei's hand tighter, hinting that he ought to compose himself first. Originally, Lo Binghei's backstory hadn't been exposed in such detail, so Shin Qingqiu had been unable to judge how deeply this would strike him. He feared it wasn't something a few comforting lines and a couple of head pats could resolve. The faint hopes and dreams Lo Binghei had held in his heart for many years had been mercilessly pulverized into so much dust. Neither father nor son were willing to act the part. Being a pure-blooded demon, Tianlong Jun was already indifferent to the concept of parental bonds. After his suffering at the hands of Su Jian and the other humans, his hatred had extended even to Lo Binghei. He refused to speak a single word of their relationship and had been utterly ruthless back in the Holy Mausoleum. And on top of that, Su Jian's decisions with regard to his son and his father painted an even clearer picture. Deception, exploitation, disgust, rejection, treating them as her shame, abandonment. To his parents, Lo Binghei was an unwanted child. Wu Wang frowned. To think you have the gall to say such words, as expected of a demon. Lo Binghei turned a deaf ear to them. If he was my father, why didn't he bring it up earlier? Why not tell me? The most Tianlong Jun had said was that single line he offered while beating up Lo Binghei, devoid of either praise or criticism. He looks like his mother. He looks like his mother, what of it? But that was all. There was nothing more. Shin Qingqiu couldn't find the words to say. From his point of view, the most likely explanation for this was probably that Tianlong Jun really did have some mental issues. But the atmosphere wasn't right, and Shin Qingqiu hadn't the mind to do a thorough roast. He turned it and said, I ask everyone to calm themselves a little. Lo Binghei did not come to Zhaohua Monastery today for the sake of provocation, nor does he harbor evil intentions. Indeed, Master Wu Qin agreed. I asked Xizong to first lend Peak Lord Shin an ear. Shin Qingqiu sent him a grateful glance, but Wu Wang sneered. Not harboring evil intentions, you say? Wu Wang raised his voice and yelled, Then what are those? Oh no! From the crowd emerged 10 or so warrior monks dressed in red gold robes with a bunch of people already in their grasp. They pressed their captives to the floor and billows of black chi fanned from the victims. The scene very logically erupted. Demons had managed to breach the temple to the nth power. Lo Binghei really did come prepared to the nth power. What a fucking development! Zhu Xiong's hodgepodge subordinates were supposed to be Lo Binghei's tools for farming favor, but now everything had completely backfired. They'd been mistaken for an ambush in league with Lo Binghei. With great insight, Shin Qingqiu pulled out his fan right in time to meet a heavy staff blow from Wu Wang. With a slight raise of his fan arm, Shin Qingqiu blocked the staff mid-strike, keeping it aloft. He was very careful about his level of force, ensuring it was just enough to create a stalemate with Wu Wang. With this, he managed to spare Lo Binghei a backward glance and a rushed line, Leave it to this master. Oh my god! Well, we have one more chapter yet. Okay, great. Great. Wonderful. He was about to say more words suitable to the occasion when Wu Wang rebuked him. Shin Qingqiu, don't end up like Su Jian, with your hearts led astray due to a moment's carelessness, resulting in a lifetime of regrets. As a Peak Lord, you should know some shame. Shin Qingqiu's feet almost slipped out from under him, and his expression couldn't help but twist a little. Well, how is this situation the same? Oh, Shin Qingqiu! Yes, he is referring. It is kind of the same. He's telling you not to fall for Lo Binghei, but son of a bitch, no! He just managed to ride his expression when Lo Binghei sent a palm strike at Wu Wang. Shin Qingqiu channeled his spiritual energy into the tip of his fan, blasting away the staff's next blow. Didn't I just say leave it to me? Lo Binghei's expression was dark and clouded. Well, he can say whatever he likes about me, but not about you! In the span of this exchange, they'd already been surrounded by the cultivators in the main hall, all dressed in various colors. Sure enough, the moment Lo Binghei used demonic chi, hostilities erupted with marked celebrity. Wu Wang waved his staff. Well, sect leader Yu, this fiend still addresses Shin Qingqiu as his Shizun, and Shin Qingqiu has yet to repudiate him either. What is your view? Do you still recognize Lo Binghei as a member of Sangzhong Mountain? Yu Qingyang didn't answer, and his face appeared without emotion, devoid of joy, sorrow, pleasure, or anger. His voice, too, was steady, its pitch neither rising nor falling as he remained calmly seated. Shidi come back. getting some vibes with that, but we'll see. Shin Qingqiu unconsciously took a step toward him. He thought to himself that he should first admit his wrongdoings and pacify the chief a little. If Yu Qingyang could come over to their side, they could definitely keep the situation under control. But before he could head over, Lo Binghe grabbed him. "Well, don't go," he repeated himself again. "Don't go." Within his tone was a hint of desperate pleading. Shin Qingqiu hadn't managed to answer when hundreds of sword glares were sent careening towards where they surrounded the center of the crowd. Liu Qingge's pupil shrank, and Chang Lan left its sheath in answer. Suddenly, tremors shook the entire main hall. A dome of light, arcing with sparks of black and white lightning, exploded. When the tremors ceased, people lay strewn all across the floor. Roughly only 1 in 4 remained standing or leaning on support. Lo Binghe's eyes were now red, their glow brighter than daylight, as if either searing lava or crimson blood would flow forth from them at any moment. His lapels and sleeves billowed with a black chi that roiled without pause. The demons pressed against the floor burst into laughter. "You old-timers are indeed shameless, ganging up on someone like that. You actually have the audacity to use the same underhanded method you turned on Tianlong Jun. Not just using it. You have to be all self-righteous about it, too. Ha!" Lo Binghe held Shin Qingqiu with one arm. "I am a demon, so go ahead and attack me altogether," he said, enunciating each word clearly. "I don't care. But what has my Shizun done to be attacked together with me?" In truth, Shin Qingqiu had suffered no injuries. The tremors had been violent enough to make him stumble, but Lo Binghe had immediately grabbed him, pulling him into the crook of his arm, and thereby protecting him. He wanted to continue mediating, but Wu Wang interrupted. "You call him Shizun, and he doesn't renounce you. Is this not reason enough?" "That bald donkey!" Shin Qingqiu twirled the fan in his hand, knocking away various swords and blades as they came at him from all kinds of bizarre angles, sending them flying. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "What does this Shin's renunciation, or lack thereof, have to do with you?" The endless sounds of weapons clattering to the floor filled his ears. Shin Qingqiu turned and suddenly saw Yu Qingyang coming straight at him, straight on, imposing and formidable, with a hand on Zhan Zu's hilt. Shin Qingqiu's arm immediately felt weak, to the point he almost sent his fan flying right from his hand. "Oh, fight, Yu Qingyang! Oh, like hell!" But unexpectedly, though Yu Qingyang raised Zhan Zu, he didn't direct it at Shin Qingqiu, but rather glanced off course by a couple of inches. A resounding clang rang by Shin Qingqiu's ear, and he quickly twisted his head around to look. Zhan Zu's hilt was in a deadlock with Wu Wang's staff, having blocked it. Unable to hit on Lo Binghe, Wu Wang had decided to hit Shin Qingqiu from behind. Though Yu Qingyang had joined the battle, he didn't attack the two surrounded targets. Instead, he blocked the blades meant for Shin Qingqiu again and again. With Yu Qingyang jumping in, Liu Qingge also entered the fray. The pair fought at random, their modus operandi about the same. They attacked anyone as long as it wasn't Shin Qingqiu, causing nothing but trouble. The problem being that this trouble came in the form of two experts, and their attacks were vicious and precise. And finally, Wu Wang couldn't take any more. "Oh, Peak Lord Liu," he said enraged. A single slash of Liu Qingge's blade shaved the whisks off of the Tianyi Temple Daoists into bald, featherless dusters. "My hand slipped," he said, expressionless. Wu Wang was so angry his whiskers stood up straight. "Well, sect leader, you!" After deflecting Wu Wang's staff from Shin Qingqiu for a third time, Yu Qingyang spoke too. "Oh, my eyes were mistaken," he said mildly. Everyone at the scene thought in unison. The saying that Sangjiang Mountain sides with their own no matter the sin was indeed not baseless. Oh, okay. One slip of the hand could be explained, but two? One mistake of the eyes was understandable, but they'd been continuously mistaken ever since you stepped in. "Can't the two of you fight properly? Exactly whose side are you on?" And the table flipping emoji, yes! Yu Qingyang and Liu Qingge sent a message with their actions. "Go ahead and fight, but under no circumstances may you strike the Qijing Peak Lord." Shin Qingqiu shoved Lo Binghe with the back of his hand. "Will you leave first?" Not only did Lo Binghe fail to be shoved, he grabbed Shin Qingqiu's wrist. "Shizun, let's leave together. Come with me." Shin Qingqiu didn't turn his head to look at Lo Binghe's expression. First, there was no time, and second, he couldn't bear it. He yanked his hand free and urged him on. You're still not going? When I tell you to leave, leave. Be good and listen to me. He didn't know how long he could hold the others off, and he absolutely couldn't abandon this mess of a situation and escape with Lo Binghe. Yu Qingyang and Liu Qingge had been brazen with their show of bias, and Wu Wang was already furious. Either Shin Qingqiu or Lo Binghe had to stay behind, or open conflict would erupt between Zhaohua Monastery and Sangjiang Mountain. After a short period of silence, Lo Binghe said quietly, all right, since Shizun said so. In the next moment, he had landed on the field outside the main hall. His speed was so fast, so terrifying, that for a moment everyone forgot to regroup with their weapons and chase him down. Well, set a barrier! Wu Wang shouted. Several monks rushed forward towards the field. Shin Qingqiu pulled out Zhuya with incredible speed and snapped his fingers. The sword careened forward right into their midst, disrupting their formation and sending them into disarray. This master will return to Sangjiang Mountain first. Oh, okay. All the time! This master will return to Sangjiang Mountain first, he called out to Lo Binghe. I'll come find you afterwards. Lo Binghe had Meng Mo's techniques. They'd be able to meet without a problem, no matter the time. So as long as Shin Qingqiu plopped his head down and slept, when that time came, Shin Qingqiu would properly soothe Lo Binghe's injured psyche and his wounded heart. But at the thought of saying this out loud for everyone in the hall to hear, Shin Qingqiu couldn't help but feel a little diffident. He sneaked a glance at the pair from Sangjiang Mountain, unable to stop himself. Lo Binghe saw this. The corner of his mouth twitched a little, and a strange smile spread over his face. Quite a few people who saw that smile shivered, terror welling in their hearts for no discernible reason. I will come back for you, Shizun, Lo Binghe said quietly. Before those words had fully left his mouth, his silhouette had disappeared. With him gone, Wu Wang let out a frustrated yell. In contrast, Shin Qingqiu sighed in relief. He immediately recalled Zhuya to its sheath, then he removed the sword from his waist and held it horizontally, offering it to Yu Qingyang with both hands. This situation was urgent. Having no alternative, Qingqiu committed a great many offenses, and now he asked Shang Minjiang for his punishment. Yu Qingyang made a sound in acknowledgement and pushed his sword back. Since you've already come back, we can discuss the punishment after returning to Sangjiang Mountain. Shin Qingqiu peeked at his face. Though Yu Qingyang's expression was incredibly stern, given his actions in the fray just now, that was probably only a show he was putting on for outsiders. Based on prior experience, Yu Qingyang's "we can discuss this after returning to Sangjiang Mountain" was basically the equivalent to "forget about it, let's go home and have dinner." His sect leader was unquestionably incredibly lenient, but getting rid of Wu Wang wouldn't be so simple. Lo Binghe had escaped in full view of everyone, and although most of the blame lay with the three peak lords stirring up chaos, Zhaohua Monastery would lose face no matter how hard they tried to frame this. So instead, Wu Wang pressed his palms together and said, I'm afraid we can't dismiss this incident so easily. At the very least, Peak Lord Shin must offer an explanation. Either that or Sangjiang Mountain must offer an explanation in his stead. Okay, well, this is your chance to gain those farm them points back. From a corner, someone said shrilly, well, just now we called Su Jiang confused for placing a man's sweet and honeyed words above her master's grace. But this Shin Qingqiu is even more confused. Even without Lo Binghe's sweet words, he still fails to understand the full extent of the situation. Shin Qingqiu pretended he didn't hear this. While Yu Qingyang remained courteous, the disciple of Sangjiang Mountain's members naturally falls upon this Yu. I will, of course, offer everyone here a proper explanation. Master Wu Qin was pleased. Amitabha, this is the best possible conclusion. I trust that sect leader Yu and Peak Lord Shin will most certainly settle this affair in a fair and proper manner. Everyone was speechless. They were all thinking that either Master Wu Qin's monkhood had far too detached him from the dust-ups of mortal affairs, or that he was suppressing his conscience and lying through his teeth. Wu Wang humped and then continued his censure. That might not be the case. Perhaps everyone here has forgotten the sower incident in Jinlan City. Peak Lord Shin said that then he would explain himself, but the truth is, as of today, he has yet to give us anything. After a short incarceration in the water prison, he escaped, then faked his death in Huayu City, vanished for 5 years. Sangjiang Mountain still has yet to release any sort of detailed statement on this matter. If this was the explanation Peak Lord Shen and your honor sect meant, this one frankly cannot afford any compliments. He was dredging up old affairs, but Shen Qingqiu's focus had wandered off and he wasn't listening at all. The system had already sent him a flashing red warning. Like fuck he had the mind to listen to an old monk attempt to settle old scores. The Zahua Monastery scenario has ended. Final score. Righteous image points, -200. Quest completion status, 100% failed. Shen Qingqiu had hit the 200 mark, but instead of +200, it was minus. In his long history of painful back and forths with the system, this was the first time he'd fallen below the danger line of 0. Suddenly a sharp pain pierced his head, along with an overwhelming sense of dizziness. Quest failed. Honored customer, please be prepared. In 60 seconds, you will be sent back to your original world. As long as any points values fall below 0, he'd be sent back to the original world. Well, don't! Fuck! Shen Qingqiu roared internally. You're sending me straight back just for this? Don't you know that my old account has already been canceled? It was just one failure. I have so many satisfaction points. Can't they serve as compensation somehow? What about B points? I have plenty of B points too. Surely having some of them have some use. Overwhelmed by panic, his mind churned and quaked while his face flashed through a myriad of colors, green, then white, then red, one after the other. Noticing something was off, that Shen Qingqiu looked like he was about to vomit or faint at any moment, Liu Qingge asked, "What's wrong?" "Would you like to use all of your current satisfaction points to purchase another method of punishment?" Yes, no matter the cost! There came a ding. Purchase successful. Satisfaction points reduced to 0. Please take note of your balance. Downloading the punishment. The pink-hued satisfaction points value really had become a 0. This was the second time he'd gone empty. Shen Qingqiu mentally waved goodbye. His head was no longer in pain, but the dizziness remained. Yu Qingyang knows something was wrong with him. Were you hit? With a hand on Shen Qingqiu to keep him steady, Liu Qingge raised his head and asked, "Well, who hit him?" The Bison Peak Lord was asking a question, and with such a terrifying look on top of that, everyone fell over themselves to shake their heads. This had to be an act. Well, who could have hit Shen Qingqiu? In that situation, Shen Qingqiu was the last person who could have been hit, okay? Who was the one who'd been protected by 3 masters, both covertly and in broad daylight, and now he wobbled? He had the audacity to wobble when he'd only ever been hitting everyone else? The sounds of dispute around Shen Qingqiu became increasingly harsh and garbled. His head spun, and then his vision went dark. He went down with a thud right between Yu Qingyang and Liu Qingge. He really collapsed. When Shen Qingqiu opened his eyes again, he was no longer at Zahua Monastery. He looked all around but saw absolutely no one. From the look of things, he was in a dream realm. However, under normal circumstances, his current dreams always featured Qijing Peak. This was because he connected to Lo Binghei's dream realm, and Qijing Peak was the latter's favorite dream realm location. At a loss, Shen Qingqiu walked about for a while, carefully examining his surroundings. Suddenly, he realized this was indeed Qijing Peak. However, it was the Qijing Peak after it had been razed to the ground. From the bamboo forest to the bamboo house, all had been reduced to ashes. Only some crumbling debris and withered stalks remained, charred black and toppled over. Wisps of white and scorched stench of smoke drifted above. Faced with such utter desolation, the more Shen Qingqiu looked, the less he could remain calm. This was far too thorough a razing. What a massive grudge! Shen Qingqiu pinged the system. "Oh, can you explain the current situation?" "Greetings. While the punishment is in progress, the system's other functions will not be available as usual. We ask for your understanding and wish you good luck." So the punishment had already begun. Shen Qingqiu punched an imaginary wall in his mind. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps on gravel reached his ears. The footsteps followed a pattern. Each step was followed by a pause, slow but not hesitant. Instead, they gave off a sense of power, a feeling that the person in question was crouched in wait, ready to pounce. In the midst of a scorched earth and rubble, a silhouette slowly approached. A cold wind blew, fluttering in this person's black robes and wide sleeves. His face was a flawless snow white, matching the overlapping panels of his collar. Arms crossed, he slowly sauntered forward. Oh no! An expression of contemptuous disdain hung on his face, and from time to time he kicked the charred pebbles by his feet with an air of utter disinterest. Inadvertently, Shinshingcho called out, "Oh, Lo Binghe!" Lo Binghe blinked and his head turned just a little. A cold, indifferent gaze pierced the air towards Shinshingcho. It fell upon him like the stabs of two icy knives. His heart jerked, and suddenly the wind felt too fierce, his clothes a bit flimsy. Or why else would there be a chill along his forehead and back? Lo Binghe raised an eyebrow and flicked some non-existent dream ash off his sleeves. He let out a closed-mouthed, questioning hum, a hint of confusion within it. Shinshingcho immediately stopped right there. This feeling was wrong. Lo Binghe tilted his head. Shinshingcho? This was even more wrong. The tone, the expression, the disposition, none of it seemed like Lo Binghe. But at the same time, they all seemed like Lo Binghe. If compelled to give a clearer explanation, Shinshingcho would have said the person standing before him right now felt like the original Lo Binghe. Oh my god! Oh my god! Shinshingcho froze on the spot. With his lack of answer, Lo Binghe took a step towards him. Shinshingcho automatically moved to grab for his sword for self-defense, but the spot at his waist was now completely empty. He knocked on the door in his mind. "Oh, system, what exactly is up with this punishment scenario? Where did you get the scenario from? Are you telling me to fight the boss barehanded?" Greetings. While the punishment is in progress, the system's other functions, including consultation, are not available. We ask for your understanding and wish you good luck. Fuck. What am I supposed to do in this situation? With his hands tucked into his sleeves, Lo Binghe smiled. "Oh, Shinshingcho, why are you here? From what I recall, I never let you in, no?" Shinshingcho was now 10,000% certain that the person before him was absolutely not the Lo Binghe of the world he knew. When addressing him, Lo Binghe always said Shizun, Shizun, his voice sweet as honey. He never dared to call Shinshingcho by name, let alone speak to him like this, with a tone like he was goading a dog. In any case, this was a punishment scenario, so Shinshingcho probably wouldn't die. With this thought, Shinshingcho managed to relax a little. He said calmly, "This is Chijing Peak." Lo Binghe looked around. "Well, if you hadn't said so, I wouldn't have remembered." How could he not remember? If this was truly the original Lo Binghe, wasn't the culprit who'd so thoroughly raised Chijing Peak none other than himself? Oh, well, that's all. That's all. That's it. That's all we've got to worry about. No big deal. No big deal at all. It's fine. Everything's great. Oh my god. Except everything's not great. Just. Yep. Congratulations, Shinshingcho, except you blew it! You blew it! Man, so remember when we could have had nice things? Oh no! This is really bad. So I fully expected Shinshingcho to pull it off. I thought he was gonna be fine. I fully expected that he was going to be okay, and I'm going to pick all of this up, so hold on. Ugh. I thought he was going to pull it off. I thought that I was like, this is going to be a little bit hard because, we've kind of set Lo Binghe up to be the villain, and now what do we do? So it was going to be really hard, but I had faith that Shinshingcho was going to pull it off, and then the more things went on, I was like, oh no, we're not pulling it off actually. Uh-oh. And here we are. So before we dive in and mess with Whiteboard Kun, we need to look at the chapter titles that Reiki has put on the Discord for me. So chapter 69 was In Zhao Hua Temple Part 2. See, it makes sense. Chapter 70 was in Zhao Hua Temple Part 3. And I'm going to take a wild guess. Oh no! Chapter 71, The System's Penalty. So, no pictures. How dare they? How dare they no pictures this week? of anything. I wish we had some. I guess we didn't need any pictures because they're literally, this is the picture from the chapter. This is the moment. And it's of Shin Qingqiu taking his hand with all of Zhaohua Monastery and Wu Wang and all of them surrounding them. So that's literally what it is. Oh my gosh. This chapter, I'm not looking forward to next week at all. I'm not looking forward to next week at all. Because regardless of what ends up happening, Shin Qingqiu is going to suffer. He's going to pay the price. And I don't know if it's going to be, it could be a number of things. So we should probably talk about what could possibly happen with him next week. Because he's encountered Lo Binghe, only it's the original Lo Binghe, the one from the book, the one that supposedly hates Shin Qingqiu. And it felt like a very It's a Wonderful Life moment, where in It's a Wonderful Life, the main character, the main character in that series, played by Jimmy Stewart, he doesn't believe that his life is worth living. He but a series of things happen and they lead him to contemplate committing suicide. And so he's like, well, the world would be better off without me. And Clarence, who's an angel in the series, in the movie, is like, oh, no. He's like, you don't understand. You leave such an impact on people's lives that they would be completely changed without you. And the moral of the whole movie is that no matter what you do, any small good gesture that you give towards other people has a huge impact and is paid forward by those people. And it leaves this giant ripple effect. And the main character that Jimmy Stewart plays, he just doesn't believe that it's possible. So Clarence takes him back to see what the world would be like without him in it. And it's completely changed. And and that's how George Bailey, that's who his character's name is, realizes the impact he had on their lives. So this Lo Binghe that doesn't have the impact of Shin Qingqiu is not what the Lo Binghe of now is. So what this flashback is going to do, or rather this penalty, what this penalty is going to do is it's going to show Shin Qingqiu the influence and the impact that he has had on Lo Binghe. Because Shin Qingqiu keeps on being like, oh, well, it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't that much. I didn't do that much. No, you did. You've contributed a lot. And that's not a bad thing, but you have done a lot and you need to own up to it and quit trying to be humble and just be like, yes, I have influenced him. And I think he's going to realize that by being with the original one there too. And also I feel like Shin Qingqiu, it's going to make him miss the other Lo Binghe. Now, what Lo Binghe OG1 could do when he sees Shin Qingqiu, I don't know how long this punishment is supposed to last, but it doesn't seem like it's supposed to last a long time. It's just like a reset. It's like a reset before he goes back to... I was assuming he'd be in Sangzhong Mountain Sect, and he'd open his eyes and see Liu Qingge there or something. But I don't know how long this penalty or punishment is supposed to be, but it seems like maybe... Like, the worst case scenario is that Lo Binghe, the OG one, I mean... In the original, Shin Qingqiu ends up as a human stick. So, but I don't think he would do that because that seems like it would take a long time and he's just seen him. So, and I don't think he's going to take the time to like take Shin Qingqiu back to his lair and torture him and do all that. I don't see that happening. So my theory is that he's going to either completely ignore Shin Qingqiu and just be like, I've got better things to do. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to be with you. And that's going to show Shin Qingqiu how much he misses the Lo Binghe that exists in the real world by being ignored by Lo Binghe, the OG version. Or, worse than that, is what if, Lo Binghe, for all of his brattiness and for all of his, like, coming on to Shin Qingqiu and coming on so strong, it's always had this layer of sincere love behind it. Him being like, well, I do actually love you. I wasn't a fan of it in volume 2, but a lot of you were okay with it, and I see where a lot of you are coming from. So in comparison to the OG Lo Binghe, there was always, despite me not liking the way he was doing it, there was always a layer of sincere love behind it. It was just like, dude, you're not doing it the right way. You're not doing it correctly. Shin Qingqiu doesn't want that. But here, with this original version, he might come on to Shin Qingqiu without Shin Qingqiu's consent. I don't don't want that to happen, but it might be just to prove a point to Shin Ching-cho of how the OG Lo Bing-hei is in fact different from the one that's been currently with him in the story. Because that's been Shin Ching-cho's biggest thing. If we're going to talk about Shin Ching-cho in this, and we're going to put him up here, the thing about it is he's always had trouble treating the characters in the story as people and not just characters. So when he's actually faced with the actual character, that might make a difference. So I don't know, but I'm worried. I'm so worried because I'm like, this is not going to be good next week. I don't want to do this. Nope. I don't want this to happen. I'm terrified. Absolutely terrified. Anyway, so let's talk about these chapters. So Wu Wang, who is there with Zahua Monastery, Wu Wang and Wu Qin are our shoulder angel and shoulder devil who are trying, like, Wu Qin is trying to support Shin Ching-cho in his narrative. Wu Wang is like, has gathered the mob Gaston style, ready to kill the beast. And Shin Ching-cho's like, now wait a minute. And I'm honestly surprised by a couple things with this chapter set. One, Chi Ching-cho, she's gone. We haven't seen her. I kept expecting her to pop up, but we haven't seen Liu Mingfan yet either, so maybe they're off doing other things. But I was expecting Ning Yingying to show up. Her and Mingfan, don't see them, don't know where they're at. I was expecting them to show up. Honestly, Yu Qingyan, I don't know what to think of him as a character. I really don't know. Like Liu Qingge, I get he's a tsundere. He likes Shin Ching-cho. He's a tsundere. He's very much like Jian Chang in Modao Zushi. He's very much kind of like not really Pei Ming and Heaven Official's Blessing, but he functions as this role of being, he's kind of like Feng Shen. That's who he's like from Heaven Official's Blessing, Feng Shen. He kind of functions as this third wheel, but he's friends with Shin Ching-cho. He has a crush on Shin Ching-cho, but he's not letting that out. But he's supportive of Shin Ching-cho. So I feel like he's loyal to him, and I don't question that he wouldn't ever try to hurt Shin Ching-cho. He's trying to protect him, and he doesn't trust Lo Bing-hei. His character is pretty clear. Yu Qingyang, I cannot get a read from him. There were moments in this chapter set where he reminded Heaven Official's Blessing, spoilers, until I raise my hand and wave it again, so just be on the alert. Yu Qingyan, there was a moment in this where he was giving me Jun Woo vibes, like hardcore Jun Woo vibes, and I was like, but then in the next breath, he was like, no, we're bros, it's cool. I'm like, what? So I don't know what to think about him. I can't decide if he's a secret villain and it's all coming back around, or if he's actually okay and MXTX is just trolling us with the biggest red herring in the world. I cannot decide. And she makes him super stoic, and into those spoilers, she makes him super stoic and really hard to read, and I just don't know what to do with him. I'm assuming when we go back to the present time and see him in those chapters, we'll get some kind of explanation, but I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know what to do with it. But anyway, so all the cultivators they all talk about Tianlong Jun in this and about Su Jian. And man, this chapter set might as well be called Let's All Feel Terrible for Lo Bing-hei. Because that's exactly what MXTX is just like. She's carving the onions and she's like, hey, she's sitting there whittling on an onion in the background. She's like, hey, I know Lo Bing-hei's been a brat. I know he's done some really crappy things and made some bad decisions, and you've been misunderstanding him the whole time. But what if? I'm like, no, MXTX, and she's like, but what if we just did a role reversal from back in Jinlan City? What if we just changed the roles and went from there? What if we did that? And I'm like, you don't have to do that. I've learned my lesson, MXTX. You don't have to punish us. We've learned our lesson. No, I felt like Shin Ching-cho. I was like, well, you don't have to teach us a lesson, MXTX. We're fine. She was like, being all like a gremlin. Because, yeah, you had back at Jinlan City, you had Lo Bing-hei being the one that everyone believed in. And then you had Shin Cho being the one who was slandered. And the effects of that were that Lo Binghe ended up getting angry and denouncing everyone. And Shin Cho, because he'd lost faith in Shin Cho, and Shin Cho ended up self-detonating. And then we ended up where we are. Now, it's the exact opposite, where Lo Binghe is the one called into question. And the crazy thing is, back in Jinlan City, Lo Binghe was like, well, you're only thinking this because of my demon blood. And Shin Cho was like, no, I'm not. Who would do that? And then guess what happens this chapter? They all do it. And what's so crazy is, back in volume 2, I was rooting for Shin Cho having people find out that Lo Binghe was sketch. Because I was like, he's acting weird. And I wanted people to find out how sketchy he was to clear Shin Cho's name. But then you find out why he was acting sketch and how his heart has been and what he was thinking, his mindset. And you kind of go, oh, well, never mind. And now the story's catching up being like, well, here's what you wanted. And it's like, no, that's not what I wanted. And so Shin Cho, the thing about it is, Shin Cho missed an opportunity. Do I think he could have passed this round? I do. Do I think the system knew he was going to pass this round or not? Oh, the system knew he was going to fail. We're going to talk about the system, but the system knew he was going to fail. And I feel like this whole punishment has been set up by the system, because the system is the scum villain self-saving system. It's designed to fill in the plot holes and to save the protagonist. And if the protagonist is in fact Shin Cho, as it's become, then the system is going to try to save him. But if the system's like, bitch, you need to wake up and start taking some responsibility and do something, and Shin Cho's not doing it, then the system's like, well, then fine, I'm going to make you take responsibility. And it's like, and so here we are. But here, everything's called into question, and Shin Cho, he can't decide on fully supporting him or not. Because Shin Cho is still clinging to this idea that he's in denial, that he cares about Lo Binghe that way. And I get it. I get why he would. But this is a moment that he knows that all these people saying all these wrong things about Lo Binghe are wrong. They're all in the wrong. They need to be corrected. And he doesn't correct them. Instead, he's trying to figure out, well, what should I do? And that inaction leads to everything going awry and leading him to fail the mission. So this definitely, as angsty as it was and as like heartbreaking as it was, this kind of needed to happen to give Shin Cho a wake-up call of, hey, you got to take action now. Now's the time. You've been in denial the last how many chapters, even though you admit more and more, it's all being spelled out in front of you. You need to stand up, quit, don't start leading Lo Binghe around, because it was starting to get to the fact of Shin Cho being like, well, we can get away with this because Lo Binghe, I can, when he decided to go with Lo Binghe, he's like, well, at least I can order Lo Binghe around because he likes me. I can't do that with Tianlong Jun and Zhu Xilong. At that point, it's like, so now the system's like, no, you can't do that. You're going to have to communicate and you're going to have to work with him. And if not, you're going to get punished, whatever that punishment ends up being. So the thing that's so heartbreaking about all this is that we also have both of these characters being questioned about their past and their quote unquote family, right? Which is hilarious for Shen Yan because he's Shin Cho. He's not really this person or really has these family members. But we have his whole thing with Shin Yu or Shin Zhu, which was the version of him that Chiu Haitang, right? She pointed out before the self-detonation, she pointed out that Shin had been with this family, and that was something that was brought up back in volume 2, and MXTX kindly like brushes it aside, and I'm like, it's going to come back eventually. But we pointed out that Shin had this backstory of being kind of like fostered by this family, and then bad stuff happening to him, presumably, and then it leading him on this path to ruin, right? And he doesn't even acknowledge that past self. Then you have Lo Binghe, whose parents didn't even want him, didn't even want anything to do with him, and he doesn't even recognize either of them as his parents. He's like, I had a mom, wasn't Su Xian, it was somebody else, and she's dead. He's like, so I don't have any parents. So you have Shin Shingqiu and Lo Binghe both kind of denying their upbringing, right? So anyway, then we had the triplet sisters from the original harem. Ruby's taking Huckleberry's toy. We have the original nuns. Of course, the nuns are interested in Shin Shingqiu now, not Lo Binghe, because did he free them back in the cave? Was that him freeing them back in the cave? Was that him? I think it was. It was him with the help of Liu Qingge's apprentice. They helped free them. So of course now they're all into him. He's like, son of a bitch, I don't like them. Of course, Lo Binghe gets jealous, and he's like, well, do you think they're pretty? And Shin Shingqiu's like, no, I didn't think they were all pretty to begin with. I was just excited because I wanted them to be with you, and I wanted you to be happy. And that's it. He's like, he wanted Lo Binghe to be happy. And he thought at the time, reading the original novel, that Lo Binghe being happy was because he was with all these women. But now that he's seeing that it didn't make him happy, and it's not making him happy, he's kind of given up on that, and it doesn't mean the same to him. So I love the slow and subtle development with Shin Shingqiu's character as we go through this. It's so well done. But yeah, so the head disciple was Su Jian, and I feel bad for Tianlong Jun, kind of. Tianlong Jun being warped by that woman. He kind of speaks of her fondly because I think he liked her, but she also like crushed his heart and used him and loved him and left him. And the thing of it is, the old palace master, I kept waiting for them I kept waiting for Shin Shingqiu to correct them on the old palace master, because the old palace master basically confirmed to Shin Shingqiu that he was lusting after Su Jian. And I thought the drink he gave her was like trying to drug her so he could assault her. But supposedly it's a drink for her to like be able to abort a demon fetus, but we don't know if that's the case. We don't know that. That's all hearsay. That's the problem with this chapter set, is that all of this is gossip. We don't know what's true and what's not true. We only know the account from the old palace master as Wu Wang tells it, but there's no one to fact check and determine if that's true or not, because the way that it is, Shin Shingqiu's like, this story doesn't add up. You have Tianlong Jun, who is this poet who is like into literature and just wanted to visit the humans and kind of indulge in their like desires and what they like to do. But then you have, even as the story went on, the way that the people's gossip about Su Jian kind of like twisted, because at first they were like, what a cold, heartless badass. She infiltrated the enemy lines and like did all this stuff. But then by the time she's pregnant with Lo Binghe and leaves, they're like, what a mistress, what a weak woman, what a shameful woman. It's like, well, make up your mind, which is it? And it was so, I hated the fact that Lo Binghe was there having to listen to all of it. One, because you find out that he really didn't know about Tianlong Jun being his dad until that moment. And it's like, oh shit, well, great. Awesome. And Lo Binghe's like, I hate him. I want nothing to do with him. He wouldn't even acknowledge me as his son when I first met him. Why would I want to hear it secondhand from you all? But then he's hearing about his birth mother, who he doesn't care about. He only cares about his foster mom. It's just really, really hard. But yeah, things just don't add up. There's so many kinks in the armor of the story, and the plot armor just doesn't work. And it's so frustrating. And I think Shin Shingqiu realizes it. And so the question is, is this because of airplane shooting towards the sky's writing that's so messed up? Or is that just inherently how the story is framing it? And we don't know. We don't know the answer because it's not given to us. It's all in the past, so we can't go back and check. So, but yeah. So Shin Shingqiu is trying to like figure out what's going on. And so Su Jian, she ends up falling and having intercourse with Tianlong Jun, and then she gets pregnant. And so the old palace master, when Wu Wang said the old palace master overheard that Tianlong Jun wanted to like build the demon's race and everything, I'm like, I'm with Shin Chingcho. That doesn't sound like him at all, especially not based on how you built him up. But who's to say that the old palace master didn't just make that up and tell them? He very well could have, you know? But it really sucks because Shin Chingcho knows how gossip works in this world, and it sucks because Lo Binghe has kind of been the victim of it, and Shin Chingcho feels bad because he knows he's been on the end of the stick where he's blamed Lo Binghe for things that he didn't end up doing. And so now as he's hearing this story, he's like, well, all of this doesn't add up. So how do we know it's not any different than me thinking Lo Binghe killed Gong Yizhao when it was actually Zhu Xilong? The only thing that doesn't seem made up is the fact that Zhu Xilong was the third wheel on that date and they were sitting on him. That part makes sense. But I would be really curious to see if Shin Chingcho asks Zhu Xilong if I don't think he'd get it out of Tianlong Jun. I think Tianlong Jun would roll his eyes and be like, I'm not telling you, it's in the past. But I feel like if he asks Zhu Xilong what went down, Zhu Xilong would be honest and tell him because that's just his personality. So maybe he'll find Zhu Xilong and he'll tell him. We don't know. We don't know how that's going to work. But regardless, it causes there to be all of these red flags raised, and the old palace master informed all the great sects, and then the next day they ambushed Tianlong Jun and put him under the mountain. And honestly, I feel like my interpretation is, one, I like that they reveal that it was just an ambush. It wasn't an actual war. Again, unreliable narrators. And all of the other soldiers there who are finding this out for the first time are like, you guys said this was like this massive battle, and instead it was just like 2 on 20. What? But not only that, in my opinion, I feel like the old palace master, they ambushed Tianlong Jun without Su Jian realizing it. She'd fallen in love with him. They were planning to do something together, maybe to merge the worlds then, who knows. But she ended up being so distraught by him getting imprisoned that she left. And the whole thing about the poison, I feel like it's what the old palace master was trying to do to her, but it didn't work. I don't know. The crazy thing about these chapters is that Shin Chingcho can't figure out what's exactly true and what's not, and neither can we, and we're not given any answers. So it's kind of left up to our reasoning to figure out what's true and what's possibly exaggerated. But it sucks so much. And so then the system's like, oh, your quest is issued. Help Lo Binghe complete the Zhaohua Monastery scenario and raise his righteous image points by at least 200. This felt like a game of Roller Coaster Tycoon. I loved Roller Coaster Tycoon when it was like you made the roller coasters in the theme park. But whenever they gave out quests, like, oh, you have to raise the customer satisfaction to level 300 by the end of 2 years, it was like, this seems like a lot. I don't know if this is going to be feasible. And that's how this felt, because it's like, well, how do you know how much to raise his righteous points to? And how do you know what the scale is? Like, explain yourself. When did righteous image points come in? And Shin Chingcho's like, this was part of the plot of the original Zhaohua Monastery, where demons attacked and Lo Binghe used it, kind of like Jinlan City, to make his appearance better. But now things are kind of reversed from there. So what's interesting is that Shin Chingcho has the moment to come forward. And when Wu Wang asks him to stand up and speak about the matter, Shin Chingcho has been very passive this entire story and has been very passive aggressive and just kind of like, well, I'll explain if I need to, but if I don't need to, I'm just going to kind of like let the chips fall as they will. But this was the one time he probably needed to speak up on Lo Binghe's behalf and clear the air. And he didn't do it. And he failed the mission because of it, because things got out of hand. And I feel like this is Shin Chingcho's wake-up call of, look, you want to help Lo Binghe? You want to save him? He's a scum villain. You want to save him? You're going to have to start getting a little more proactive. Because to be fair, Shin Chingcho, this entire series, has always kind of sat in the wings, waving his fan, being like, it'll work out. We got all this in the bag. And now it's not him he has to worry about, it's Lo Binghei's fate. And it's like, well, if you want to come to terms with one another, you're going to have to save him. I probably shouldn't have erased the save Lo Binghei part, but that's what they're going to have to do. To save him, they're going to have to come together. And he's going to have to be a little bit more responsible. But when they started their tirade of describing Lo Binghei as this abomination, the cuckoo who roosts in the warbler's nest, basically in the series March Comes in Like a Lion, that metaphor was used too, but it's the idea that a cuckoo will lay its egg in a nest of other birds, and the baby bird will basically evict the other birds from the nest, and it will take over, which is kind of what happened in the first volume, where Lo Binghei was with the other disciples and he became the favored one. It's exactly that, but damn. And the thing about it is, Lo Binghei, as he listens more and more, he just slowly slumps in defeat. He very much is like, what am I going to do? What am I going to say to this? He's like, I didn't even know these people. I don't even know my family. But everything he was afraid of Shin Qingqiu saying about him and his demon blood, it gets confirmed with all of these other individuals. And it sucks a lot. When they were asking, like, with him standing right there, why she didn't abort him, oh my God, that was so horrible. That was so horrible. And just calling him a monster. And they'd known him before, presumably. Some of them may not have, but I like that Wu Qin tried to speak up and defend him, but it just wasn't working. And now Shin Qingqiu's like a cold-hearted and yet truly incredible woman. And then they're like, wow, well, she got with a demon. The mere thought's disgusting. Which is so funny because Shin Qingqiu's probably going to get with Lo Binghei by the end of this. So all this conversation, he's probably going to be like, well, you know. But they're like, so Tian Longjun was driven by neither evidence nor incident. I like that Wu Qin tries to defend Lo Binghei and bring up some legit, like him and the Bai Chi sect individual. They both brought up some really, really, the Bai Chi sect. They brought up some really, really good logic. I guess that was Master Chen. They brought up some great points, being like, why aren't we questioning this, and this? But then Wu Wang, he just gets that mob mentality going, and it just starts all back over again. And I kept waiting for Shin Qingqiu to speak up, and he just wouldn't do it. And it's like, you not speaking up is not going to help the situation at all. And so Shin Qingqiu's like, well, I could point out the demons, but then if I point out the demons, are they going to think that Lo Binghei brought them? So he just took too much time to figure it out. He took too much time to decide on doing something, and by the time he had decided on something, it was already too late. It sucks. So then we have Yu Qingyan. Whenever he said, "Are you still lurking?" it was like, it felt like a dad calling his child forward, being like, coming out of the shadows, be like, you got something to say? My thing is, I don't know how to read Yu Qingyan. I don't know how to read him. He says Lo Binghei is no good, but he wants to protect Shin Qingqiu. And whenever he said, you know, Shin Qingqiu came forward and like bowed, he said, come here. And it was like, and Lo Binghei is like, oh no, don't leave me. And it's like, oh my God. I'm like, does Yu Qingyan like him? Does he have a crush on him too? Everybody else does, so why would we be surprised? I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. But everybody's like, well, now they all know Shin Qingqiu's back. Everybody knows. Even though he self-detonated, he's still here. And he's like, a lot of nonsense you've stirred up these days. Are you done? That whole lot of nonsense, ooh, it was a lot. And so Shin Qingqiu, the thing about it is, he's sitting there being like, let's get the plot back on track. He's like, well, what do I point out the demons? He's like, how am I going to farm righteous image points like this? And honestly, the crazy thing is, he could have just spoke up in that moment and started talking, but he was still trying to figure out what to say to try to win everybody over, but not make it seem like he was, he's like, I don't want to, everybody think I'm in love with Lo Binghe, so let me find a way to speak up without seeming like I'm too devoted. I'm like, you love him. You are in denial that you do, but you clearly care about him. You need to do something about it, right? And that's when Lo Binghe denies like that Tian Longjun or Su Jian are his parents, because he's like, those people have nothing to do with me. I don't need them and I don't want them. And so whenever they said that originally Lo Binghe's backstory hadn't been exposed in all this detail, so Shin had been unable to judge how deeply this would strike him, it's like in the OG novel, the audience finds out his backstory, but the people in the story don't. So it makes a difference on how he's perceived. And now that Lo Binghe is a different person than he was in the OG novel, it affects it even more. So I felt so bad for him. I really wanted to just give Lo Binghe the biggest hug in this set of chapters when they talk about how his parents basically, it was just a mixture of deception, exploitation, disgust, rejection, abandonment. Nobody wanted Lo Binghe. And it's so sad. And it over and over again, Shin Chingcho kept saying he didn't have the words he couldn't find the words to say. And he's like, from his point of view, the most likely explanation was probably that Tian Longjun really did have some mental issues. It's like Shin Chingcho has these opportunities to speak up, and he tries to calm things down. But by the time he tries to calm them down, it's like, by the time he tries to calm down the situation, it's too late. Like, it said 2 or 3 times in the chapter that he had the opportunity to speak up and he just didn't do it. And it's like, so yeah. And then about that time, whenever he's like, oh no, Lo Binghe is actually okay, that's when all the demons show up and they all think it's Lo Binghe. And the crazy thing is, back in volume 2, I would have been like, yep, see how evil Lo Binghe is? Somebody save Shin Chingcho. Now it's the polar opposite. And I'm like, Shin Chingcho, you gotta speak up. You all knew this was gonna happen. You all knew this was going to happen. You were just holding out, waiting for me to get there. I don't blame you. But it's so sad. And so Shin Chingcho tries to do like what he's done in the past and protect Lo Binghe and been like, just leave it to me. It'll be fine. And the crazy thing is that Yu Qingyan, Wu Wang is like, look, Shin Chingcho, he's still protecting Lo Binghe. Lo Binghe's calling him Shizun. Do you still recognize Lo Binghe as a member of your sect? And Yu Qingyan, I can't read him because he asks Shin Chingcho to come back without any indication of what he's thinking. And when Shin Chingcho unconsciously takes a step forward, reminded me of Shi Lian just a little bit. I'm just saying. And he's like, he thought he should admit his wrongdoings first and pacify him. But Lo Binghe is like, oh, don't go. Don't leave me. Like, I don't want you to leave me again. And so Shin Chingcho's like, what do? I feel that maybe if I'm giving Yu Qingyan the benefit of the doubt based on what he does after this moment, maybe he was trying to keep a calm presence so he didn't appear biased, and he was going to try to get Shin Chingcho to say something. And I can't decide with his character, and these are Modao Zushi and Heaven Official Blessing spoilers, just so you're aware. I can't decide as a reader if Yu Qingyan is going to end up as Jun Woo and be the secret villain, or if he's going to end up like Jishin, Lan Wangji's brother, and be the secret person that puts them together. I can't decide if he's going to be either of those, or if he's going to be totally different. I can't read where his character is going at this point, and I feel MXTX is doing that deliberately. Because even though he seems very sketch, he does end up saving Shin Chingcho and saving him from Wu Wang's like hitting him with the staff. And that gets Liu Qingge involved. And so then you have the two sect people. The funny thing is, Liu Qingge and Yu Qingyan are both characters that Shin Chingcho kills in the original novel. And here, like in the OG one, we might as well put that on there. In the OG one, you have Liu Qingge and Yu Qingyan that were killed by Shin Qingqiu. And here they both team up to save him at the Zhaohua Monastery, which they both teamed up to save him back at Jinlan City. So, again, talking about how the kindness that Shin Qingqiu showed, both of them, pays back in dividends. They just were around him all the time. They were adults. Even if they have a crush on him or like him, they were already, you know, from a pretty stable upbringing. Whereas Lo Binghe is not, for reasons. So it just, oh my God, it's wild. I got a little worried at first when Yu Qingyan like sprang forward. Like I can envision in my mind the moment that happened where you saw him like coming towards Shin Qingqiu with the sword. I was like, oh shit, he's gonna fight him? That isn't gonna go well. Is Lo Binghe gonna step in? What's gonna happen? And then he saves him from Wu Wang. But the way that MXTX drew that and the way that Lily translated, I was like, that did make me think for a second that he was actually gonna fight Yu Qingyan. And we have learned over the course of this series that he has a mighty giant sword that is not probably compensating anything. So yeah. So then he's like the saying that Sangjiang Mountain sides with their own, no matter what the sin, comes to life here. I love that there's a little table flipping emoji. I wonder if that's in the book. Is that in the book? Is there the little table flipping emoji? I really want to see if that's in here or not. Because it is in here. That's so cute. Yep. Where he's like trying to figure out what to do. He's like, just don't hurt Shin Qingqiu. And so then Shin Qingqiu tells him to leave. And Lo Binghe tells him to come with him. And as much as I wanted him to go with Lo Binghe, I absolutely know he had to stay there to try. And if he ran away now, after Liu Qingge and after Yu Qingyan, like, saved him, that would be in poor taste. And, like, they literally saved his life. He can't just leave them, you know? But he makes it up for Lo Binghe by leaving, like, by saying, you go there, I'll meet you at Sangjiang Mountain, I'll come find you afterward. And everybody just like looks at Lo Binghe being like, oh, he's gonna come find you later. And Lo Binghe's like, okay. So I feel like whatever punishment Shin Qingqiu has to go through when he gets back and meets up with Lo Binghe's gonna be just fine. I was afraid that Lo Binghe was gonna be in bad spirits when he left Shin Qingqiu during all this scuffle, all this madness, and was going to be like dour again. But this smile spreading over his face, a strange smile, but a smile nonetheless, is a good sign. In the creepiest of ways, it's a good sign, we suppose. But yeah, and so he's like, I will come back for you, Shizune. Maybe Lo Binghe will reach through the punishment and save Shin Qingqiu. Maybe. I don't know how many chapters that punishment's going to be, but we'll have to wait and see. So, anyway, they managed to beat the Zhaohua Monastery, and Shin Qingqiu gives his sword to Yu Qingyan, is like, whatever punishment you want to give me, I'll take it. And Yu Qingyan's like, you know what, we'll discuss when we get back home. Which Shin Qingqiu determines means forget about it, everything's fine now, no harm, no foul. And I'm like, I don't know what to make of that. That just seems so lenient and simple, right? It just seems so simple. But regardless, Wu Wang, he's like not gonna let this just end. Instead, he wants an explanation. And the thing about it is, again, he wants an explanation. And he even says, he's like, well, this Shin Qingqiu is even more confused than Su Jian was. Even without his sweet words, he still fails to understand the extent of the situation. And I'm like, the thing about it is that I wish Shin Qingqiu would just take it in stride and not, I wish he'd be shameless about it. Shin Ching Cho has said throughout this novel he's shameless. He's like, I'm shameless. I don't let it get to me. Then I'm like, whenever people make these accusations of you, then just fire back and be like, yeah, sure. I feel like Wei Wuxian and Xi Lian would have been like, of course, yeah, got a problem with it. And that would have been the end of the battle. But Shin Ching Cho's not there yet he's not there to let it like go like water off a duck's back. It still affects him and it still causes him to kind of like clam up. And I'm like, you just need to be shameless and say, yeah, what about it? I like them honeyed words. What you got against it? You know, he just needs to let go, and he still isn't. I think that's one of the reasons he fails this mission, because he's not there yet. And so he says he's going to offer an explanation, but then it never ends up happening, because Wu Wang ends up making his arguments and everybody believes him instead. And it says that 100% failed. And so he fell below the line of 0. And the crazy thing is, your quest failed. Honored customer, please be prepared. In 60 seconds, you'll be sent back to your original world. So, apparently, at any point during this story, if he had failed the mission, regardless of how many points he would not have earned, it fell below 0. There were no righteous image points to begin with. So because there were no righteous image points to begin with, it went below the 0 mark. So he failed and was going to just instantly game over. That's insane. So Shin Ching Cho's like, no, can I trade anything out? B points, satisfaction points. Can I use some of those to not die, to not be game over? I only got 1 life. What is this? And I like that the others around him are starting to notice that something's off. They're like, you're acting weird. What's going on? And he's like, ah. So they're like, do you want to use all your satisfaction points? Which he had the luxury edition scene pusher. He had 2,340 satisfaction points, but nope. Back to 0. And Binghe points, at least the Binghe points are still at 1580. We don't know what their current updated version will be when we get to that, but satisfaction points is back at 0. And so he's like, we're downloading the punishment. And he's like, no matter the cost. I don't know. That line, no matter the cost, I don't like where this is headed. Not one bit. And so then he collapses. And he wakes up and Chijing Peak is completely gone. Like it's been razed to the ground and completely destroyed. The scariest thing would be if the Lo Binghe that's the original one that he encounters in this punishment is not one with a harem, but just one that is roaming around by himself with no one to love and is completely unhinged. Nope. No thank you. No thank you. Nope. And so I like also the system is like, the system's other functions are not available as usual. We ask for your understanding and wish you good luck. Like the system's like, we're not helping you. You just have to deal with it. It's called a punishment. It's like, oh no, damn it. And that's when he sees Lo Binghe and the consultation, like he just has to grin and bear this. And that's it. It's like, and the fact that Lo Binghe called him Shin Ching Cho, that was like the immediate sign that Shin Ching Cho was like, oh shit, this is the original one. This is not Lo Binghe. Not good. And then the fact that he doesn't even recognize that it's Chijing Peak, like just shows how far off the wagon he's fallen and how much he's fell from grace and how much he didn't care about that place. And again, it all goes back to the beginning where Shin Ching Cho showed kindness to Lo Binghe and cultivated, no pun intended, the experience of him and the other disciples and made him find this second home. Without all that, there's no reason for him to not go crazy. And it's crazy. So, oh my God. I don't know. I feel like to make him a human stick, I thought he would take him back and torture him first. I thought that was how that went down. But I don't know. I feel like what he's going to end up doing is either completely ignoring Shin Ching Cho, and Shin Ching Cho will be like realize how much he does actually care for Lo Binghe, and he's like, no, don't forget about me, don't ignore me. Or he might try to do something like sexual with him, and Shin Shingqiu's like, oh, I'm not comfortable with that, but maybe he has a realization about it. It's supposed to be a punishment, so it makes TX, I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried, MXTX, of what you got planned, so. Anyway, this chapter set was crazy, off the walls, but I'm excited to hear your comments down below. Next week, we'll be looking at chapters 72 through 74, and it's going to be 40 pages, so even more fun. So in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next time with more of Scum Villain Self-Saving System. Bye!